So, welcome to the China Career Summit by the Age Society. I have the pleasure of sitting here with Christina Dean, the founder of Redress, for this conversation with Redress. Christina Dean is a sustainable fashion advocate. She is the founder of Redress, a Hong Kong NGO with a mission to reduce fashion waste in the industry. An award winning journalist, Christina has written opinion pieces for CNN Style, Huffington Post, Modern Media, and more. Christina co-authored the book Dress with Sense, and her TEDx talk, You Are What You Wear, has been widely viewed. She's one of UK's top 30 inspirational women, and we have her here with us today. Welcome, Christina.
Hello, Cleopatra.
I'm so excited to be sitting here. You're a great friend of the Age Society, and we've done, a couple projects together. So, like I always say, when I talk to people who lived and worked in Hong Kong and China, my first question to them, why Hong Kong?
Well, why Hong Kong? I mean, Hong Kong is just such a diverse, exciting place full of opportunity. And for me, why Hong Kong has got a personal answer and also a professional answer. So I'll first give you the personal answer, which is a little bit organic, so to speak, which is in 2005, I decided to move to Hong Kong with my young family for an adventure. And that was really the spirit of excitement that was fueling me. And that was the personal side of why Hong Kong. But that very quickly, the moment I landed in Hong Kong, turned into a professional explosion into the rest of my life, really. And so the why Hong Kong in my professional life is much more, I think, exciting in the sense that when I moved to Hong Kong, I learned everything I know about environment, sustainability, fashion industry, supply chain, business, collaboration. And so I really give Hong Kong a huge amount of credit to who I have become 15 years on.
So, you didn't just move to Hong Kong, you started your own NGO, which is a phenomenal feat in and of itself. So, what was the inspiration of founding Redress and why, sustainable fashion?
So when I first moved to Hong Kong, I was actually writing as a journalist, and I had also, prior to that, been a practicing dentist. And I'm a bit of a nosy Parker, actually, and I'm sort of, when I get interested in something, I dig and scratch and chew and chew. And as a journalist, I was writing for the South China Morning Post, freelance, as well as other consumer publications. And I kept on writing about environmental pollution. And in particular, I was very fascinated with China's industrial sort of landscape, how the supply chains had moved over the last 10, 15 years, and also, sadly, how polluted China is and was, when this was 15 years ago. And so for 2 years, I had this really insightful incubation period working as a journalist. And I wrote about, as I said, environment, pollution, but I also wrote about current affairs, news, social issues, travel, health, beauty. And it was just such a wonderful way to integrate with Hong Kong, with business, with the community. The great thing about being a journalist is that you can knock on pretty much anyone's door. This is not literally true, but you can knock on most people's door and many people will let you in and they will tell you what they think about subject A, B, C, and D. So the reason I say all this is that working as a journalist allowed me to access parts of Hong Kong's industry and community that as a lay person, one cannot actually do that. So after 2 years, I became and remain extraordinarily concerned about the fashion and textiles environmental impact, particularly on China and APAC area, because 60% roughly of the world's clothes and textiles are produced in the APAC area. And within that, China is the world's largest exporter of clothing and textiles. And the reality of the textile industry is that it is very polluting. And so this is why I started Redress in Hong Kong, because I stumbled on a very big topic as a nosy journalist, and I stumbled there and I got stuck. In 15 years, I'm still there.
Stuck isn't the word that I would use. You're definitely pioneering the industry Can you tell our students, our audience, what has been the role or the role that Redress continues to play in sustainable fashion within Hong Kong and Asia and globally?
Mm-hmm. Well, Redress's mission is to reduce waste in the fashion industry, and we work with different stakeholder groups along the supply chain, which sounds very boring. I mean, it sounds like a very, working with stakeholders, it sounds very corporate, but what it really means is that we work with different pockets of the fashion industry to either educate, raise awareness, or more importantly, get action going to make the fashion industry less wasteful and therefore more sustainable. Now, why Hong Kong? Hong Kong is a very interesting place because it has such a powerful fashion industry that's all located in a really small area. I mean, obviously, Hong Kong's a relatively small geographical space. But what's fascinating about the history of Hong Kong's garment industry and textile industry is that you have many big businesses. You have their, say, head offices in Hong Kong, and then they may have their factories or suppliers or their other sub-businesses throughout the sort of Asia area. And so the beauty of working within Hong Kong in terms of sustainable fashion promotion, education, awareness building is that if we can influence Hong Kong and the leadership in Hong Kong, then you actually are having a really outsized impact onto other areas of Asia, because many, many key decision makers are sitting in Hong Kong and working. And so without going into the deeper, like operational work of Redress, but to summarize the answer to your question, the fashion industry is very, very global. And the entire fashion industry has to work together to make things better. And the beauty of Hong Kong is that you have the whole fashion industry really quite collaboratively working together in a smallish geography, which makes it very effective to leverage change.
So obviously you are a foreign CEO. You're originally from the UK, as I understand it, and you are having your business in Hong Kong. So that obviously comes with a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities. So how do you feel as a foreign CEO establishing a business in or NGO in Hong Kong? How has that shaped, the character and the operations of Redress?
I've never really felt like a foreigner in Hong Kong. I mean, I have lived in Hong Kong since 2005. And throughout COVID, I've had an interruption to that for obvious reasons of transport and not being able to freely travel at the moment. So by and large, since 2005, I've been based in Hong Kong, minus the last couple of years, etc. Why I say all of that is because when I started Redress in 2007, after that 2 years incubation, nosy Parker journalist period, as I said, I never really felt like a foreigner. I felt very capable of starting a non-profit, even though, quite honestly, I had absolutely zero idea of what I was actually doing. So perhaps being the foreigner wasn't the issue. It was the newness of what I was trying to achieve that was the issue. But I would say one thing, that after, let's just say 10, 11, 12-ish plus years of being in Hong Kong, the sadness that I get is very unexpected, I expect, what I'm about to tell you. But I feel a foreigner every time I get in a taxi. And it's not because I don't know how to say where I want to go. It's because I don't know the real culture, the real things that people are talking about on the radio. And the taxi driver would laugh. It would really kind of, what are they talking about? It would really irritate me that I couldn't truly understand what was being said. So for me, being a foreign CEO was much more about being able to absorb the true culture of the people. That meant I was somewhat working blindly. And that was my biggest problem and disappointment and frustration. Because I think you can pick up so much about a city, the people, the attitudes, the flavor, the color, the taste, from what's actually going around on the street. And unfortunately for me, because I don't speak Chinese, Mandarin or Cantonese either, I could never really understand what was actually going on. So that was my biggest disappointment, that unfortunately, I'm absolutely useless at languages. And so I couldn't overcome that. And that's my greatest complaint, really, about being foreign.
So, in terms of trying to understand the culture, do you have any ways that you try to overcome your hurdle of not, being able to speak Cantonese or Mandarin?
I mean, the fact is that I was perfectly able to do my work and to build up partnerships and to do, I think, pretty impactful work at Redress, despite not speaking the language. And obviously, there's one obvious reason for that, is because you can very easily operate in English without speaking Chinese in the Asia area and Hong Kong, China. That said, I think the important way to ensure that you remain relevant and true to the culture in which you are working is obviously to engage with locals, and therefore to really listen and to learn and to probe and to question, and to be open in a very kind of wholehearted way to the communities in which you're working. So for me, that meant always working with people who are local to Hong Kong, and obviously Chinese speakers who could inform me of all the things that I was missing. Obviously, you therefore are always learning things secondhand, but it's better than nothing.
So, just to give our audience some context about Hong Kong in and of itself, obviously there's such a vibrant foreign community in Hong Kong. So, what are some of the ways in which you learn about your industry through those professional associations or through other foreigners located in Hong Kong?
Well, I wouldn't say that I learned everything that I know from other foreigners in Hong Kong, but certainly I learned from a lot of associations, because in Hong Kong there are groups for everything, I want to say, which oversimplifies it, but there are associations, working groups, there are chambers, there are sub-business groups, there are topic interest groups, there are like evening social groups. You can find networks relatively easily, I'd like to say, in Hong Kong for whatever you're interested in. And so through jumping into, staying in, sometimes moving on from different associations involved in fashion, supply chain, logistics, consumer groups. I mean, because the fashion industry is so big, there are many, 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 many groups. So it's very easy, and it was very easy for me to swim through all of these networks and pick up contacts, pick up support, pick up friends, business opportunities, sponsorship opportunities, media opportunities. I mean, you name it. There's a very open can-do attitude in Hong Kong, which I loved, and I thrived off it. And I think, if anything, it really influenced how I do business, charitable work, however you like to call it, but how I approach a deal, whatever that is. It's always with a can-do attitude, and dare I say it, let's get to the point attitude, which I think I cultivated very much in Hong Kong, because it is such a place where it is can-do. It's also get to the point, and I like that about Hong Kong.
Yes, I've been to Hong Kong many times, and now that I live in New York, where the Asian Society is located, I definitely see the similarities in terms of the hustle and bustle and, the can-do spirit of the cities. So most of the attendees today are really interested in having, starting their own business, or perhaps going to Asia, Hong Kong, or China. What advice do you have for students with similar entrepreneurial goals?
I would say fantastic. I would be celebrating and cheering you on to have these entrepreneurial goals. So I think before jumping in and like charging away with a entrepreneurial goal, I would really suggest to do your thorough homework before you dive into a new pursuit, be that like setting up a new business, or basically setting up a new business. And I'm telling you something as someone who's run, 2 organizations that I actually set up in Hong Kong for 15 years. if someone had told me in 2005, 6, when I was thinking about starting, oh, don't start it, do research. And, I would have said, I'm going, I'm going to do this. So I understand enthusiasm and passion and impatience. I really understand that because I had that too. But as I speak from a more mature perspective and having, operated a relatively growing complex organization 15 years on, I would say have enthusiasm, have passion, have courage, have dedication, and know that you can do it. But I would spend a lot of time researching before you actually dive in to either start an organization, move, join another organization. So it's perhaps a little bit of a wiser and older perspective on the need to be very thorough before you get going.
Yeah. That's definitely important advice. As they say, the best success always starts with preparation. So thank you for that advice for the students. In terms of your business now, obviously COVID has been such a strong global disruptor. I myself have been working from home since last year of March. And I think a lot of other folks are in a similar situation. You are now based in London. So how has COVID shifted your business or changed your business? And in what ways is Redress innovating during COVID?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing is, like you, I've been working from home. The closest I've got to Hong Kong is that behind me. I miss it so much. So I have it behind my head to make me feel that I could even be there. So yes, we've all learned how to get on with things in this tough old time. And we've always, it's amazing how great when push comes to shove, us humans are pretty clever at getting things done. And that's true of us all, that the resilience that we have is very exciting, even though, of course, it's been horrible from a mental health perspective, particularly challenging for many people. So to answer your question, obviously, my biggest challenge is that I physically have not been able to get to Hong Kong because, from a very practical perspective, to share with you, my kids actually go to school in the UK, so I can't just leave and sit in a hotel for 3 weeks doing the quarantine. I have to be closer to my children. So that has meant a different management style. And I have to say that I'm extraordinarily